Hello and welcome back to ForgeTalks and to another exciting, entertaining and thought-provoking episode. I'm rejoined by some old guests, not old as in age, but have been here before. Eve and Steve, which is also very fun to say. Welcome back to ForgeTalks.
It's a pleasure to be here, as always.
Thanks, Fraser. Appreciate it.
So, guys, we caught up about 9 months ago and we were talking about the healthcare industry and the challenges that were facing it at the time. Obviously, 9 months has passed. 2020 was a pretty tumultuous year. I'm just curious, what's changed in the healthcare industry and what's the latest?
Since we last spoke, we actually have published our third in a row consumer breach report. And so we now have the latest numbers on healthcare breaches. And so we've seen some trends, and the trends are a little bit concerning about healthcare record breaches.
Right.
So yeah, you want to check on the health of healthcare record breaches, and things are not all good. Even though it was the lowest number of records, 1% of the records stolen. It was 34% of all the breaches, okay? And it was actually the highest cost per record, $474 per record. And it's concerning because here's how to think about it. These are the most attractive caches of personal data. And here's the way I like to think about it. You've got a lot of valuable stuff in your house, okay? This is the personal data. Some stuff that you could steal is like your clothes, your jeans, your comfortable jeans. And some of the stuff that could be stolen is the caches of jewelry in your house. The healthcare records are your jewelry. There's not a lot of it, but each little piece is very valuable and hard to replace. That's the healthcare records.
Yeah, I like that analogy. Really puts it into perspective.
Yeah.
So what do you think is causing the healthcare industry to be such an attractive target then?
Well, Fraser, in our last Forge Talk that we had, we discussed a lot of the consolidation of the healthcare industry. There was a lot of mergers, a lot of acquisitions, and that actually accelerated even in 2020.
Right.
Only because of the COVID situation. Some companies were more targeted with less cash. They were taken over. Well, that trend continues. So even into 2021, you asked about 2020 to 2021. M&A is a topic of discussion on a weekly basis as far as providers and payers and even on the retail side of the house. And because of that, it's a big risk. And the reason I say that is it's opening up for attackers that are sitting there laying in wait. And they're looking at it maybe a smaller company and trying to get into a bigger company. And when you come from a merger and acquisition and you have that acquiring company, when you think about it from an identity perspective, who has what where and who has access to what? When I'm acquired, I have different identity systems in both companies. So where's the single point of truth? Where's the single pane of glass to understand where all my identities are with all these disparate tech systems, identity systems, LDAP systems, etc. Just that confusion alone is an extremely attractive target to go after.
Okay, sounds pretty scary. I feel like you're teeing me up for a great solution. So, tell me what if I'm in this situation, what do I need to do about it?
So this is where it gets really interesting, because when everything's changing all around you, this is where you actually start to think about artificial intelligence and machine learning, right? And actually our colleague, our chief product officer, Peter Barker, likes to say that organizations these days are organisms, which is maybe appropriate for the healthcare industry, come to think about it, because they're just so constantly changing. And our org charts, as Steve is really saying here, are constantly changing. And I've talked to folks who are like, I don't even have an org chart anymore. And this is the challenge when it comes to who should access what sensitive resource, right? And the classic solution for this, which is role-based access control, it really becomes problematic for these circumstances. So what you really need to do is get visualization into what access is anomalous, what access is becoming risky for these sensitive resources, for the jewelry in the house, right? So what you really need to do is start to look at all these disparate sources of information that are coming from potentially all the acquired companies that are making up this new company, not just from the native IT systems that came from one company.
And tying into that, Eve, too, when Fraser, when Eve talks about this, non-native systems and disparate systems and components. What we're actually referring to is anything that touches identity. So a real life scenario is company A by company B. Company B already has a governance solution. They already have an identity management solution. Company A has that as well. And then they also have app owners that have said, well, I don't want to go through the governance solution. It slows me down. I'll just do something in my own Active Directory or LDAP or spin it up quickly. And all this data that's coming across is really how do I get that understanding from a compliance perspective, from an audit perspective, even from a line of business like an app owner? How do I go back to you and say, hey, Fraser, the application that you own, you have some very high risk people that have access to things that we don't understand why. And that goes back to Eve's comment about the AI and machine learning. These are not just entitlements that people are being given. They're actually behaviors, and we don't understand why those behaviors are there. And maybe there's a valid reason behind that, but it'd be great to understand who has access to what where, what is high risk, what is high touch, what are things happening, and how do we do that? And that's really how that all ties together.
So you can actually start to look at what do people like this employee typically get access to, so that this employee starts to look like an outlier, and you can start to get that picture. You can start to get that visualization.
And this is all ringing a bell, thankfully. So obviously I'm learning something here at my time at ForgeTalks.
And it's not machine learning, it's actual human learning. It's good to hear.
We're talking about governance, right? And auditors and green eye shades and all that.
Well, I think there's a confusion between that, and let me help educate you even further, Fraser, as we go through it. But auto ID is not something that supplants or replaces your governance. It actually makes your governance solution better, whether it's a ForgeRock solution or whether it's a third-party solution. And the reason I say that is that by able to have that, as I mentioned, a single pane of glass, being able to see where all of your identities are across your enterprise, it allows you to make better decisions. You'll hear people in governance, like you talked about, for that saying, I'm rubber stamping, or I'm doing things where I'm getting carpal tunnel syndrome because my people are just sitting there hitting the buttons all day saying, approve, 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 approve. But they're not really looking at that. And as you scale to a larger company, they're getting 10,000 requests a day. I mean, how can anybody go through that and really analyze it and figure out what's good and what's bad? No. So I kind of want to separate that a little bit, is that AI for us is really how to make governance better. Now, to your point about governance, if you don't have governance, then ForgeRock can actually bring in AI to understand what people are doing based on artificial intelligence, machine learning, and behaviors, like Eve said, about what are other people doing, but then automating that and going right from autonomous identity directly into a governance solution. So now you can actually feed those results and take actions and move away from this whole rubber stamping component. And I know Eve has been right in the middle of this from a governance perspective.
Yeah. So yeah, our autonomous identity solution is about giving the aha moments. And our governance solution is about delivering on the attestation use cases, the certification use cases, lifecycle management use cases that are about the green eye shades. And so that we can drive that, speed to value around all of those folks, like, the compliance officers and the business owners and the auditors who want to know the answers to all those questions.
So it sounds like in order to get your house in order, AI is just a great first step to, tidy things up. But taking that one level deeper then, what do we do to battle unauthorized access?
Unauthorized access is it's actually a key term. Sometimes we just say UA when we're talking about it real quickly. And there's actually some more results from that consumer reach report that is just out that I want to share, because unauthorized access, that phrase, it's number one, again, as the cause of breaches. In fact, it's just been increasing year after year after year, and now it's at 43% of all of the breach causes, right? And number two, by the way, is phishing. Again, it's up to 19%, so it's increasing.
Wow.
And so your question is exactly right. And the answer here is something that it's been on the lips of people for a long time, and now it's just super, super popular. It's zero trust.
Hey, hey.
And, people ask me all the time, such a popular topic in talks and everything else, what is zero trust? And it's a security approach that says threats can come from not just outside the house, but from inside the house. And so you just have to stop implicitly trusting any one entity, any one person, any one device. So like bring your own device becomes, a place where you can concentrate some security resources. So you need to continuously check in real time and dynamically and, apply the bare minimum access control and use multiple sources of information. So that's where, AI becomes part of the story, so that you can contain, some people say, the blast radius of anyone breach. And so, in fact, there was just a new White House cybersecurity executive order that's kind of how they define zero trust. And there's a NIST security, an architecture around zero trust, where this all becomes ever more important.
And tying into that too, Fraser, is the zero trust component feeds itself off of AI that we talked about earlier. It feeds off of governance. But if you look at it also from your onset at the beginning of this talk about what's different between 19 to 20, 20 to 21, and is really consumer identity and access management has taken off dramatically. So you think about telemedicine, you think about the things that are actually occurring where I need to figure out who am I actually talking with and what's going on. And then all of us today work from home, as you can tell behind my background and Eve's background, is we are working from home. So how do I know, to Eve's point, internally and externally, who's actually what where? How are they getting there? Is it mobile? Is it tablet? Is the computer? And then how do I give both the employees and my consumers, my patients, my members, depending on what industry you're in, a retail-like frictionless experience where I am checking to make sure that you are who you are. So whether that's device fingerprinting or whether that's looking at geofencing or things that actually are happening in the background, where I'm not making it painful to a patient or a member or an employee, but I'm making sure that from a nefarious activity that I'm isolating you and I understand what's actually happening so that I'm not actually giving you access to things that you shouldn't have access to because you're really not who you are. And that's really what zero trust is all about. It's kind of that trust but verify approach. And I know, Eve, you have some additional attributes of what we do with respect to zero trust.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're right that it's not just it's consumer, it's patient, it's member, it's work from home, it's telemedicine. It's actually even more than that because providers are in a lot of different circumstances. I mean, it's not just sitting behind a screen, trying to give care to a patient, but it's also people in hospital institutions in circumstances where you've got gloves on, so you can't just do touch ID. You're trying to open a prescription medication cabinet, which is very sensitive stuff. You got to protect it. There's a lot of ways in which traditional sort of password authentication is not appropriate, and we've learned very well that password authentication it's not only annoying to use, it's insecure. So there's a lot of ways in which we need stronger authentication that is not just convenient from a consumer perspective, but it has to really work well for everybody. And that's where we bring what we call intelligent access to the table, which is a method for the people who design authentication journeys to be able to do those really efficiently and responsibly to the actual circumstances of the people who need to, actually live those journeys, right? And so you can actually do things like A/B testing and sort of branching logic to the different journeys to ensure that those journeys are correctly and efficiently designed. So in the retail type experiences, you can actually test for whether people can, you can sort of upsell them if that's what you're doing, for example, as an insurer to different kinds of insurance. And you can ensure that the most efficient, proper authentication is giving the legit users the right experience and the illegit users the absolute worst experience that kicks them out at the first opportunity. So that's what intelligent access journey design is all about, and the trees of logic are doing for you.
Awesome. Well, guys, if you want to know any more about autonomous identity or intelligent access, or how ForgeRock helps healthcare companies, then you can head on over to ForgeRock.com and we'll have a ton of information for you over there. But guys, it's been so great to chat to you today. Obviously, I think the healthcare industry faces a lot of challenges, but it's great to see that ForgeRock is making some amazing strides to help combat these challenges. So thank you again for joining me. It's been really fun.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Fraser.
And guys, hopefully you enjoyed this episode, and we will see you next time.